What is up, fellow tech lovers of YouTube? And yes, before you ask, I am wearing a hat indoors because I didn't want to do my hair today. But that's besides the point. Today you came here to see a Ryzen 5 RX480 gaming beast for under 550 bucks. I don't know what the total's gonna be. I don't know it off the top of my head, but you guys will see that in a second. Hope you guys enjoy the video, stay tuned, and check out the other parts when they're out. Have a great day, guys. Before I go over the parts list and start talking about this video, I just want to say I think this is probably the best machine you could build right now, especially if you replace the RX480 with a 580 when that drops in price a little bit. But I think this thing's fantastic, and if you want a great gaming machine, pick this up and build it for yourself. With that out of the way, let's get into the parts. First up, we have the Ryzen 5 1600, which I think is the best bang for the buck Ryzen processor, and this thing has been an absolute beast. It is the heart of this build, and I don't think you'll see any complaints with it in gaming, and especially in other tasks. Next up, we have the graphics horsepower of this machine. We went with an RX 480 solely for price here. The RX 580 is better by a decent margin, but I got this thing for $150 after rebate, and right now the cheapest RX 580 you could get is 200 bucks. So in this case, 25% less price for about 5 to 10% performance, I will take any day. Next up, we have the backbone that is the motherboard, and we wanted a B350 so we could overclock this Ryzen processor. So I went with the cheapest B350 I could find for about 75 bucks in the Asrock Micro B350. But this thing has been pretty fantastic, overclocking very well. I have it sitting at 3.7 gigahertz right now, and that's a lot over base, so I think that's fine. Next up, we have the RAM, and right now RAM prices are still absolutely ridiculous. So we went with a simple 8 gigabytes for a little over 50 bucks, which is absolutely stupid compared to what it would be about 6 months to a year ago. But what can you do? So 50 bucks here instead of what should be 40, but everyone would have to pay that at the moment. We also got 3000 megahertz clocked RAM, but I could only get it to 2400 megahertz, which is weird because on my main system I have my Ryzen running at 2933 megahertz. Next up, we have the case, and I actually have a separate video on this that I never did the second part for because the recording kind of fell through, but that's besides the point. This case is beautiful. It's a Azza tempered glass piece of art. And for only $35, I honestly don't think you can beat this case in price to looks. Next, we have the power supply, and I actually picked two of these things up a few months back that were used for Bitcoin farming machines, but it is a 725 watt Senti mid-tier power supply. It's 75% plus efficient, so it's not terrible, but we're definitely saving some money here with the $30 for a 700 watt power supply, so we can overclock very efficiently without having any problems. And last up, we have the part that is really saving some money in this build. We're going with a used 600 gigabyte hard drive instead of an SSD. If there's anything you want to upgrade, get an SSD in this thing ASAP. But I got this thing a while ago for $15, and for price to performance, you're really not going to beat a cheap hard drive, and you can find them used almost anywhere if you like to use Craigslist or eBay or anything like that. Alright, the next part of this video is going to be setting up a test bench and testing if everything works. I highly recommend doing this before you start putting everything into a case, because if a part's dead, it's a lot easier to get it out of a test bench than in your case. I already had the CPU and cooler installed, so if you need to know how to do that, go check in another video. But simply just put in the RAM, then we're going to put in the graphics card and plug the power supply in and test if everything works. Doing this, we get to make sure everything's working nice, including the monitor and peripherals that you buy, before we have to worry about anything in the next part of the build. After you have everything together, you might be thinking, how do I start this thing on? Well, in the next little bit of video here, I'm going to show you how and tell you a little bit about it. Alright, we are going to boot it up for the first time. If you don't know this trick, you just take a screwdriver and touch the two power heads on the motherboard together, and if you have metal touching each other, the motherboard will power everything on. Now we will see if we have a successful boot with our little test rig. So all the fans are flowing, that looks good. Everything looks right. Let's go over to the monitor. Have just a mouse and keyboard hooked up. And we have a BIOS screen. Okay, to see if everything looks good. Let me focus really quick. Okay. And everything looks fine. Alright. Gonna hook up a drive and get Windows installed, and then we can mess around a little more. Alright, and as I said, now we are simply going to install the hard drive into the test bench, and all we have to do is get a SATA cable and power from the power supply, and simply plug it in both spots and make sure it works. After we have it working, we are going to need to install Windows 10 from a USB onto this hard drive. To do this, simply type in Windows 10 USB into Google and get steps on how to complete this. It's extremely easy. Everything from here on out is going to be a little more towards new builders, so if you guys are more experienced and know what you're doing, I would say click off this video, go check if part 2's up, and if not, come back shortly and it will be. But this is just going to be kind of a new user guide in how to do the more simple parts of getting a new computer ready, so if you want some of that, go ahead and listen and enjoy. So now, either through the BIOS or the boot menu, you're going to want to launch off your USB, and you should see the Windows logo come up with a kind of menu screen afterwards. If you are used to using an SSD, you are going to notice this hard drive is pitifully slow compared to if you're doing that, but it's a huge budget saver, and in gaming it will make no difference, but you'll see this whole process is a little bit slower due to that, but I'm going to skip over most of it anyways. So I just select the options that I don't have a product key, and then I clear the drive I'm going to use since this drive had data installed on it already, and then we will set everything up and be in Windows after it does its thing. Once inside Windows, the first thing I had to do with this board, since I didn't have a Wi-Fi module on me at the time, I used a setting in the BIOS that lets you download the LAN driver to a USB and then install it directly to the computer. And this was actually really effective, and I was surprised how easy it was. So with this extra time, I'm going to go ahead and apologize for the crappy video footage. I should have downloaded a screen capture software, but I really wanted you guys to see how this process works without doing anything first, and that would be a little bit of cheating if I did do that. Next, I'm going to do the most important step of any new computer, getting rid of Microsoft Edge and getting Chrome on this thing. It's a really easy process, just go in Edge, type in Google Chrome, and download it and wait for it to work. So again, here you can really notice that hard drive instead of an SSD, just doing tasks like downloading applications, it really struggles compared to an SSD. But as I said, it's budget saving, so there's nothing you can do about it. So the next step in my personal process is going to be downloading an antivirus. If you don't use one, then just ignore this step, but I personally like to just use a free, low profile antivirus like Avast that I'm using here. And usually they end up helping quite a bit, but if you don't care about it, then just skip this step. But I like to do this before I start downloading a bunch of applications and getting things onto my computer. As Avast continues to install, I will go ahead and tell you about a software that I think is really cool that I'll be using in a second. So this is not sponsored or anything, I don't think these guys sponsor anyone, but it is a site called Ninite, and I have no idea if that's how you pronounce it, but I'm just going with it. And this site lets you download a bunch of applications into one package. This is kind of why I like to have the antivirus first, just in case. I'm 99% sure it's clear, but I will never speak for anything 100%. And this site lets you just click a bunch of applications and gives you a installer based on all the applications you chose, and it will install them all at once, and they're usually the more general things like Java, basic apps like Chrome if you didn't do it already, Steam, just things like that. And it's a really nice tool that lets you skip a lot of the process of going to individual web pages and finding each application that you would need. The last thing you'll see me do, if the video isn't quite caught up yet, is going and installing Hardware Info 64. So you don't have to use this application, but I would highly recommend installing some kind of monitoring application on your desktop, just to see what your initial temps are on your parts and see if anything's going too crazy. Luckily, my temperatures have been amazing all the time while using this thing, which is really nice with the stock cooler. The graphics card is a little bit of a different story using a stock cooler on a graphics card, but just knowing those temperatures gives me peace of mind, and it's something I really like to have, and I think everyone should at least check while you're first using your computer. But then if you're not a fan of monitoring software and things like that, you can just kind of not use it as much as time goes on after you know everything works right. So the last thing I'm going to leave you guys with is a quick Cinebench test, just so you can see how cool these Ryzen processors really are. Got this thing for $185 off of a Jet deal, and it's amazing for that price. Like, just the sheer processing power and the fact that you're not losing almost any gaming potential, it's really cool. So I'll leave you guys with that. Hope you enjoyed the video. Come back for part 2, and have a great day.